Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. It's been quite a while since I've made one, at least uh, showing my face and talking about my current situation, which is I've been living in Russia for the past 2 years almost, um, and I would like to talk about that and maybe give some of you some tips for your future endeavors abroad, if you so choose. So, a lot of people ask, well, why go and live in another country? Why teach English? Why do any of this? Well, for me, I guess, first of all, it comes down to learning another language. That's my primary reason for living in other countries. I've done it before. I was an exchange student in Germany um, in my last year of high school. Um, and I guess that is definitely the big draw. But surprisingly, a lot of other people I meet, either Americans abroad or whoever it may be, who are living, working, or whatever, they actually don't really care about learning another language. Now, for me, that kind of would almost kill the whole experience. That would transform it into something quite different than what I'm used to. So, yeah, I personally wouldn't recommend living abroad if you personally have no interest in learning another language. Uh, it's going to make your life in that place rather restricted. Um, Definitely once I don't know, the newness and whatever wears off after the first however long it takes. For some people, it's a couple months. For others, it's even shorter. So, for those people, I imagine that they live in other countries, namely to, I don't know, get a taste of the culture firsthand. That's a little bit uh, different than maybe a touristic experience might show them. But I don't really know what it would be like personally. I've seen a lot of other people who've done this, and they don't really last very long. They end up being a little bit, I don't know, maybe depressed or cloistered up in wherever they live, and they don't really go out too much. And I personally don't like living like that. Um, and you're not going to really get a good view of the place that you live in if you're never really out interacting with people and learning new things. And if you do go out and do these things, it's always going to be marred by your input to the situation because you're always forcing other people to come down to your level of speaking, and all the interactions are going to be in your language. So it's not going to really show you a whole lot. And it's not really even going to be all that interesting, I would assume. But there are a lot of people who do this. And I don't see the draw. And I've seen it peter out for a lot of people rather quickly. And it might even give them a kind of skewed negative opinion of the country they lived in, which is sad. But yeah, so my recommendation is that you don't do it. If you don't want to make a serious attempt in learning the language, don't live abroad. Just don't. Um, Now maybe you're forced to for your job or whatever, but that's probably understood to be a temporary situation, and that's kind of a whole different setup. Um, the next thing is, in my situation, obviously, I'm an English teacher, and I think that it's very important as an English teacher to know English. Now, that might seem kind of strange. Why would a native speaker not know English? Well, as we know, many of us know, native speakers without any training or education in this area may in fact not know much about English. You can use something without knowing how it works. And if you don't know how it works, it's going to be difficult to help other people understand how it works. You can show them and show them and show them. But if you don't know the constituent parts and how they fit together, and you can't offer satisfactory explanations, it's not going to really be all that good. So, if you go and teach English, yes, you can, get a certificate and, teaching abroad, but whatever, that's kind of, minimal. You probably have to already have some inbuilt interest in linguistics and how languages function, and you gotta know how English works. Like, I mean, clearly you have to know what tenses and aspects are and the functions of them, generally speaking. Yes, it's hard to tie down, all the nuances and stuff. But you have to almost have some historical knowledge about English as well. Maybe some etymology, some knowledge about, how the spelling came about even for certain words, or the languages that have come together to make English. And beyond that, you definitely have to have exposure to other, let's call them dialects. If you have limited exposure to, say, RP, received pronunciation, that is in Britain, if you have limited exposure to other varieties of English, it's going to be very difficult to teach it, because obviously in other places they teach British English for the most part, and you have to be able to tell your students, wow, this is from British English, this word, this grammatical structure, this pronunciation, this cultural bit, whatever. Now, I've not been to Britain all that much. I've been there once for like a week. But I do have some historical knowledge about it, and I guess exposure through media. And now, after having taught it, a lot of linguistic exposure to it. I can tell you quite definitively when I hear or see something written, at least if it's British or not. But oftentimes, if it's American English or British English or some other type of English. And you have to be able to be open to allowing your students to choose how they want to speak. Because unfortunately, English doesn't have a standard. Many other languages have a gold standard of, what they teach in academic situations. Unfortunately, with English, there's no standard. American English isn't objectively worse or better than British English. British English is not objectively worse or better than Irish or South African or Australian, New Zealander, whatever it is. These all are on the same level. And you have to be open to your students speaking how they want to speak. And as such, you have to have some, well, even more than general knowledge of each of these different varieties of English and be able to correct if need be. Now, you don't have to be perfect. I know I'm not an expert in British English, but I can tell my students, well, you have to say in British English, I've got something, rather than I have something. Generally, that's the standard. Or you have to say that oftentimes when you've recently completed something, as I've just used a little bit of British English right there, you have to use present perfect. I've done it. When you have recently completed something. How do Americans say that? Well, I did it. When you recently finished something, it's different. But you have to be accepting of both. Even if it goes against your grain, as it does in my case, because I don't really like British English. But for the sake of my students, I let them speak it. And I try to help them. And another thing about teaching English abroad is that you have to improve how you speak. Oh, I know. You might think, I'm a native speaker. I don't need to do that. I speak it perfectly, don't I? Well, no, you don't. You have to improve your diction. That is, the clarity and precision with which you speak. You have to edit your vocabulary and your syntax. You have to change how you speak when you speak to people who are not native speakers. That doesn't just mean speaking slower. Like right now, speaking to you, I'm speaking differently than I would with a student. You have to purposely use clear vocabulary and speak slowly and speak with more intention than you would. Don't use so many filler words and useless, as I'm doing right now, trying to scramble for my thoughts. No, you have to be very intent on what you want to say and just say it. Or else people get confused. So you have to get better at speaking your language. And for a lot of people, they're not willing to do that. Or they don't know how to do that. Well, it comes with experience, but it's one of the most important things it is when you teach people English, that is. So beyond that, another thing I want to say about living abroad is that you have to not be constantly surprised by things or continuously under some, shocked impression. No, just take things as they are. People live here every day under certain conditions, and when you encounter these things, just go with it. Doesn't mean you have to accept it, think it's good, but just realize that this is how people live. And it doesn't mean you have to live like that, but just don't have a reaction every time. Don't always put forward your opinion about it. Now, that's difficult for me. I like to give my opinion about things. And no, I'm not like a cultural relativist. But it doesn't really come across very well if you're constantly criticizing things or saying, oh, wow, whoa, what's that? Oh, it's like not normal. If you want to live abroad, you got to take things in stride. And you have to just live as you would, back at home. And that's all I want to say for today. I have some more thoughts about the issue, but the video is getting a bit long, so let's leave it there, huh? And I hope you have a nice day.